بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. جزاك الله خير. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. أما بعد، فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Last week we spoke about how the Quraysh regained control of Mecca, and we spoke about how the descendant of Quraysh, Qusay ibn Kilab, how he retook control of Mecca from the tribe of Khuza'ah. And earlier we had spoken about how there were two tribes in Mecca. The tribe that initially had inhabited Mecca, that was the tribe of Jurhum, and how they were eventually overthrown by another tribe that came and settled in Mecca, and that was the tribe of Khuza'ah. So after a number of centuries of rule by Khuza'ah, Qusay ibn Kilab, who was from the lineage of Jurhum, and he was from the lineage of Quraysh, he was able to retake control of Mecca back from Khuza'ah. So Qusay ibn Kilab is one of the great grandfathers of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we spoke about the lineage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam last week as well, right? He is Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim ibn Abd Manaf ibn Qusay ibn Kilab. So this is how the lineage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes back to Qusay ibn Kilab, and Qusay ibn Kilab was from the descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. And also in that lineage going back to Ismail alayhi salam, there was a man named Fihr, and Fihr was Quraysh. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his lineage goes back to Qusay ibn Kilab, and then further down it goes back to Fihr, who was Quraysh, and then further down it goes to Ismail alayhi salam. Right? So we spoke in detail about the lineage of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we spoke about how the son of Qusay ibn Kilab, whose name was Abd Manaf, Abd Manaf was the one who was responsible for providing drink, providing water for the pilgrims who would come into Mecca. And that honor of providing the pilgrims with water, it remained in the lineage of Abd Manaf. So Qusay ibn Kilab, his son Abd Manaf, was responsible for providing water for the Hujjaj. Then after he died, that went to his children. Then after those children died, it went to their children. So it remained in the line of Abd Manaf. So eventually this responsibility of providing water to the Hujjaj, it came to the grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdul Muttalib. Because who is Abdul Muttalib? Abdul Muttalib is Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim ibn Abd Manaf ibn Qusay ibn Kilab. So he was from the lineage of Qusay ibn Kilab, from the line of those who had the responsibility of providing drink for the Hujjaj. So eventually this responsibility, it came into the hands of Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib was responsible for providing drink for the Hujjaj. All right, we spoke about earlier how centuries before, when Khuza'ah overthrew Jurhum and they forcefully took control of Mecca, we spoke about how Jurhum, when they knew they were going to lose control of Mecca, how they buried the well of Zamzam because they did not want Khuza'ah to benefit from the well of Zamzam. Jurhum was thinking that, look, we're going to be defeated. There's no way we're going to be able to hold on to control of Mecca. Khuza'ah is going to take over Mecca, but at least we can bury Zamzam and they won't be able to benefit from that. This happened centuries earlier, centuries before Abdul Muttalib, centuries before Qusay ibn Kilab, right? So when this responsibility of providing water for the Hujjaj came back to Quraysh, it came back to Qusay ibn Kilab and his family, they were providing water for the Hujjaj from outside of Mecca because there was no water in Mecca. Zamzam was buried, and it had been centuries since it had been buried. So the people really didn't even know where the well of Zamzam was at that point. They knew that, yes, centuries earlier there was a well in Mecca that was known as the well of Zamzam. They knew the story of Zamzam, but they didn't know where it was, right? So they were providing water for the Hujjaj. They were still providing water for the Hujjaj, but they were actually importing water into Mecca. That's something that's not easy to do, right? In the middle of the desert, bringing water from outside into Mecca. That was a very difficult task, but they took this responsibility very seriously. They considered this a source of pride and honor to provide water for the Hujjaj. So they would actually bring in water from outside of Mecca and they would provide it for the Hujjaj. So eventually, this responsibility came into the hand of Abdul Muttalib. And initially, Abdul Muttalib was bringing water from outside of Mecca to provide for the Hujjaj. All right. Now, Abdul Muttalib, he had a son. His oldest son was named Al Harith. When Al Harith had reached the age of adolescence, meaning he was at an age where he could actually accompany his father and he could help his father with his work. During this time period, Abdul Muttalib had a dream. Abdul Muttalib had a dream, and in this dream, a voice was telling him, Uhfur Tiba, Uhfur Tiba. The voice is telling him, dig the good place, dig the good land, dig it. Uhfur tiba. So then Abdul Muttalib in the dream, he asks this voice, Wama tiba? What do you mean by tiba? What do you mean about by the good land? And there was no answer. And Abdul Muttalib woke up. And he didn't really understand what this dream meant. The next night, he had a dream again, and the voice was telling him this time, Uhfur barra, the dig barra, right? So then he doesn't know what is barra. So he asks, Wama barra? And there's no answer again. So the next night, he goes to sleep and he has a third dream. And in this dream, the voice is telling him, Uhfur al-madnuna. Dig al-madnuna. So then he says, Wama al-madnuna? What is madnuna? What are these words? What does it mean? And there's no answer. Then on the fourth night, he has a dream again. And this time the voice tells him, Uhfur Zamzam. Dig Zamzam. Dig Zamzam. And then he asks in the dream, Wama Zamzam? And what is Zamzam? And then he gets an answer this time. He finally gets an answer. What is Zamzam? The voice tells him, لا تنزف أبدا ولا ترم تسقي الحجيج الأعظم وهي بين الفرث والدم عند نقرة الغراب الأعصم عند قرية النمل. When he asked what is Zamzam, he was answered, it is a source of water that never goes dry, and it is between the intestines and the blood. You will find it in a place between intestines and blood. And you will find it where Al-Ghurab al-A'sam, the crow that has a white feather. You will find a crow that has a white feather pecking in that place. So a crow, of course, is black. A crow is usually completely black. But there are some crows that they're completely black, but they have one white feather. You'll find like one white feather on the crow. That crow was known as Al-Ghurab al-A'sam, a crow with a white feather. So you will find it between the intestines and the blood, where the black crow with one white feather is pecking, and in the qaryatin namal, at the ant colony. There will be an ant colony there. So 3 clues here, right? Between the intestines and the blood, that's 1 clue. Where the black crow with the white feather pecks, that's 2nd clue. In the qaryatin namal, at the ant colony, that is the 3rd clue. And then he wakes up. Abdul Muttalib wakes up. And now he's thinking, oh, you know, if I go and I look for these signs, I look for these clues, maybe I can find the well of Zamzam. And he knew about the well of Zamzam. People of Mecca, they knew about Zamzam from centuries ago. They had heard about it, right? But they had never seen it before because they knew that it was buried. So Abdul Muttalib said, let me at least see. Maybe if I find these signs, maybe I can find the well of Zamzam. So the next day, he goes with his son Al Harith, and they go to the Kaaba. And Abdul Muttalib is thinking, okay, where should I start my search? Where can I find these clues? While he's thinking about his next steps and what he wants to do, there are some people who are coming there to the Kaaba. And at that time, of course, the Kaaba had a number of idols around it, and it also had a number of idols inside of it. And the people, they used to bring animals to the Kaaba, to these idols in front of the Kaaba, and they used to sacrifice animals to the idols. One of the idols that was there in front of the Kaaba was an idol that was known as Isaf. And we spoke about the story of Isaf and Naila earlier, right? Isaf and Naila, they were a man and a woman who had a haram relationship, and they committed an act of immorality right there near the Kaaba. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned them into stones, right? And Amr ibn Luhay, the man who brought idol worship back into the Arabian Peninsula, he actually placed these stones in front of the Kaaba for people to worship them. Before that point, when the Arabian Peninsula was still upon Tawheed, those stones were there, but they were kept on Safa and Marwa, on the mountains of Safa and Marwa, and people didn't worship them, but they were kept there just to be a reminder for the people. Like if you do something bad in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what happens to you. So initially they were kept on Safa and Marwa, but when Amr ibn Luhay, when he brought idol worship back into the Arabian Peninsula, he took these idols, or he took these statues. They were not idols yet at that time. They were just statues that the people used to look at, as a reminder. But he brought them and he made them into idols. He put them in front of the Kaaba, and he started ordering the people to worship these statues. So by the time of Abdul Muttalib, Isaf and Naila, these statues, they were idols. They were in front of the Kaaba, and people used to worship them. People used to bring animals and sacrifice it to these idols as well. So Abdul Muttalib, thinking about what he's going to do about looking for the water of Zamzam, while he's thinking about what to do, there are some people who come there with a cow, and they bring this cow to the idol of Isaf, and they want to sacrifice this cow in front of the idol, right? So a few people, they have a big cow. For those of you who have slaughtered a cow before, maybe on Eid al-Adha, it's not easy to slaughter a cow, right? It's hard to keep the cow down. It's not like slaughtering a sheep or a goat. Cow is more difficult, right? So they bring the cow, and they bring it in front of Isaf, and they start to slaughter the cow in front of the idol, right? And they actually cut the neck, and it starts bleeding. Blood comes out, and blood comes onto the ground. But the cow, it's still alive, and it's struggling, and it manages to get loose. So while it's bleeding from the neck, it actually gets up and it runs away. And they're able to catch it, a little bit further down. So they catch it again, and they put it down, and they complete the slaughter. So when they complete the slaughter, they also open the stomach. And when they open the stomach, the intestines fall out. So Abdul Muttalib, he's witnessing this whole thing. He's, look, okay, where they first started slaughtering the animal, where they first cut its neck, the blood dropped on the ground there. Then the cow got up and it ran away. Then they caught it again. They completed the slaughter. They opened the stomach and the intestines came out. So look, this is between the intestines and the blood. So, okay, so this narrows it down. This narrows it down. It has to be between the intestines and the blood. So it narrowed it down, definitely, but still, it's not narrowed down enough where he can actually go and start digging, right? Imagine, even if it's like 10 meters or 30 feet or something like that, like where are you going to dig? Right? You can't like dig that whole place. You have to have a more precise location in order to start digging. So he said, okay, at least that narrowed the situation down a little bit. Now let me see if I can find maybe the other clues and it can narrow it down more. So he goes into that area between where the intestines fell and between where the blood is, and he starts analyzing that area more carefully. And he actually finds an ant colony there. There's actually a number of ants, and they have their holes, right? So he said, okay, there's an ant colony here. So that narrows it down more. But still, it's a pretty big ant colony. He doesn't know exactly where to dig yet. And while he's thinking about what to do, guess what comes down? The crow comes down, a crow that has a white feather. It comes down where the ant colony is and it starts pecking in a certain place. Now that's very precise. Where the crow is pecking, that's extremely precise. That's exactly the place where he decides to dig. He says, that must be the place. So now he knows exactly where he's going to dig. So he starts digging. Now remember, this is all being done very publicly. This is right in front of the Kaaba. Right? You can't hide this from anyone. So Abdul Muttalib, he's digging there, and everyone is seeing what he's doing, and they're thinking, "What is this? What are you doing? You're digging right in front of the Kaaba. This is inappropriate." So other members of the Quraysh wanted to stop him from doing it. This is not appropriate what you're doing. So Abdul Muttalib tells his son Al Harith, he tells him, look, keep these people busy. I don't have time to argue with them. I need to dig. I need to do my work. I can't be arguing with these people. Please, you keep them busy. So Al Harith says, okay, he does this for his father. He argues with those people on behalf of his father while his father digs. Now, eventually, the father, Abdul Muttalib, has dug to such an extent where he has dug deep enough where he finds a stone, he finds a rock, right? A solid rock. And in those days, and even today, when people dig a well, in order to demark that well, they will put rocks around it. Even today, if you go and you see a well, they put rocks around the well so that it's known that this is a well. So while Abdul Muttalib is digging, he finally unearths these rocks, and you can tell that this is a rock. These are rocks that have been made in a formation as if they are surrounding a well. So now he realizes that he has come very close to rediscovering the long lost well of Zamzam, right? So now the other members of the Quraysh, they realize what he's doing, and they see that he has actually made a lot of progress, and they realize that, okay, it looks like he's actually going to find something. So now their objections are all gone. They're letting him continue to dig. They want to see what happens here. And he keeps digging, and alhamdulillah, finally, the well of Zamzam sprouts up once again. After centuries of being buried, Abdul Muttalib, he was able to rediscover the well of Zamzam, the water of Zamzam. And from that point up to today, alhamdulillah, it has been continuously flowing. Right? So now when he rediscovered the well of Zamzam, he said, Allahu Akbar. And the other members of the Quraysh who were witnessing it, they were also very happy. They said, Allahu Akbar. Now remember, they used to say Allahu Akbar. They used to believe in Allah, right? The kuffar of the Quraysh, if you were to ask them who created you, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُم مَّنْ خَلَقَهُم لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ. If you were to ask them who created you, they would say Allah. So they believed in Allah, but they also associated partners with Allah. They worship these idols and they would say, مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَا إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. We don't worship these idols except for the fact that we want them to bring us closer to Allah. They would say, هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. These are our intercessors with Allah, right? So they would worship idols, right? They believed in Allah as their creator, but they would worship idols and associate these idols as partners to Allah. So they were mushrikeen for that reason, right? So when the well of water, when the well of Zamzam was rediscovered, Abdul Muttalib, he said Allahu Akbar, and the people around him, they said Allahu Akbar. Everyone was very happy, right? This is something huge. So then these other members of the Quraysh who are upset with Abdul Muttalib